den today by the leader of Lancashire County Council Labour Group, Azhar, and the deputy leader, John Fillis. Of course, at this moment in time, deep in election campaign mode. I just wanted to have a chat to the guys about what the key issues are, what they hope to achieve should they take control of the county, and perhaps more generally, what they feel the political outlook nationally is at this moment in time. So first of all, thanks for joining us, guys. It's good to see you.
Yeah, good to see you, mate.
Too, Frank.
Hopefully have a better time than we did last time when the gremlins got in the way in terms of technology and so on. Azhar, can I come to you first and just ask, there was a big thing made December 2019 about Labour's defeat, and of course lots of the traditional Labour red wall seats went blue. And so I suppose the obvious first question is, given the fact that you are now out campaigning, you're talking to voters again, you've been able to get a flavour of what they're thinking. What sort of reaction are you getting? Are you seeing a difference between what you were finding back in 2019 under Jeremy Corbyn's leadership, and what you're seeing today under Keir Starmer's management?
Well, the first thing, Frank, is that it's a very different feeling on the ground when you're knocking on doors. A lot of people are really keen and happy to see you and want to, talk to you about things, especially the elderly, because many elderly people have had very few real conversations with people on the doorstep, and some of them seen people for months. So that's really nice to sort of talk to people. But secondly, compared to 2017 or 2019, Brexit isn't being mentioned on the doorstep. Brexit's now out of the way, and that Labour lost a lot of red wall seats because of Brexit. People wanted to get out of Europe, and they switched to the Tories at the 2019 general election. On the doorstep, there's many people who've said to us, well, actually, I voted for Brexit. I voted Tory last time, but I'm coming back home to Labour. So, that's a real positive. In terms of Corbyn, that was something that split people. You either, really loved him, or you were very much against Corbyn. And on the doorstep, to me, no one's mentioned Corbyn. And I think people have moved on now and looking forward to the future and seeing what the political parties can provide.
And obviously, we're talking about a local election campaign here, but for people who don't necessarily appreciate the difference between all the various tiers of governance that we now have, the county council is, I think I'm right in saying, the biggest local authority in the Northwest. Used to be the biggest in the country at one time, before Blackburn and Blackpool stupidly decided to take unitary status. That's a but it's a key election, this, isn't it, for the because the county council, in a sense, compares to what you have in Liverpool and Manchester as combined authorities. It's that economic development, that strategic transport role, education, social services, the things that, on a day-to-day basis really do matter to people.
Absolutely. I mean, Lancashire County Council now is the third largest authority in the country, and it should be a powerhouse in its own right. And one of the things that John and I and the Labour group are committed to, if we get control of Lancashire County Council, is to transform it into a powerhouse. So we can work in collaboration with Andy Burnham and Steve Rotherham in Merseyside and Greater Manchester, but we can also compete, on a level footing with the big powerhouses of Greater Manchester, Merseyside, West Yorkshire, and become the powerhouse that creates jobs, industry, enterprise, and brings greater wealth into our county. In terms of the priorities, I think the number one issue on the doorstep is potholes. Not surprisingly, it's potholes and footpaths and roads. And I think people are sick and tired of hearing from politicians for the last 4 years. The Tories have been saying that we're spending X millions of pounds, but people aren't seeing the difference. And on the doorstep, people are really angry about that issue. People are angry about not being able to get into their local primary school, because in some areas, the primary schools are saturated. There aren't any additional places, and the Tories haven't created any. And around adult social care, with the increase in dementia and Alzheimer's, there isn't the support out there in the public sector that people want, and people are really keen to see more integrated health and social care services provided, so that their loved ones can be looked after.
And in terms of the business agenda, John, a key thing, of course, is connectivity. Transport, I know, is an area of policy that you've been particularly keen to take an interest in. And we had Transport for the North, which appears now to have fell out of favour with the government. And we've still got conversations happening about Northern Powerhouse Rail, and in fact the whole Northern Powerhouse brand generally. So tell me, in terms of transport, and I suppose Azhar's touched a little in terms of the road network, but in terms of those big transport projects, where do you think Lancashire fitting in that, John? What would your ambition for the county be?
Unfortunately, for the last 4, maybe longer years, Lancashire's fallen out of the picture. It's a sad thing we have to recognise. We have to be honest with ourselves and say, Transport for the North, we were at the back of the queue. We're currently at the back of the queue. What we need is Lancashire to come together. Not only, because you talk about connectivity, if we can connect our councils, connect our businesses, and connect our trade unions together to work as one, then we can start really making things happen. We have a number of outstanding projects which were in the wings regarding, especially around train services. There's the Colne to Skipton line, there's the Skelmersdale train station, there's the Bearscough links, there's the connection between Fleetwood and Poulton. All these are there, but we need to work together. So our priority on connectivity wouldn't be at the front end, the train or the bus. Our priority on connectivity would be combined authority, but beyond the combined authority. In other words, we would have the trade unions there, we'd have the business there, to have a Lancashire seminar for the future that would provide jobs for people, and not just jobs specifically. We would be looking for green jobs, high-end jobs, but also encouraging through the development of a business bank. We can specifically target young people developing businesses, women developing businesses, other areas where we have had a lack of opportunities for people, that we'd be able to bring them forward, but working with the current business community, and also looking outwards for business across Europe. The European question may have been answered, but it's still a massive market. And from what we're hearing nationally, that market is losing favour in Europe. We need to reconnect that as fast as possible. We need to then connect internationally as well. And as such, we would be developing a business unit that would look outwards, not just inwards. But we need to back that up. And this is where we're saying we're looking at organisations like ECDL, which is already there, already working across a wide spectrum of small and medium businesses and some larger businesses as well, to say, why don't we turn the ECDL into a bank? And that way we can really start working with the community, because people are working in the community. And that's what it comes down to. If you actually look at a lot of priorities for people, it is my job secure? Have I got jobs for my kids in the future? Will I be able to work, after, my trade is gone? Where am I training? How am I doing things? So this is where combined isn't just about transport links. It's about links with business, links with universities, links with schools, links between councils. Beyond that, when we say, well, what about the transport links? Our transport links in Lancashire are poor, let's face it, compared to Manchester, Liverpool, and they're moving even further ahead with the franchising. There's no question about that. And we will be pushed further and further back. But then again, our funding from government has been cut again and again and again. Even though they've put money back in just recently, it's nowhere near the amount we had. So rather than complain, which I could do and say, oh, the government won't give us enough money, that's it, we can't do anything, it's the end of the world. No, we have to create new systems, new ways of working. And the only way we can do that is working with everybody else. We cannot become a closed door council, which has happened under the Conservatives.
Azhar, I think the thing that, Lancashire has been good at for many years now, under both Labour and Conservative regimes, is sort of business support, business development. And, one of the things that is outstanding is the Boost initiative. And again, if you go back through the history of how the county supported businesses, Lancashire Enterprises, and then, of course, in its new format, as John said, still doing that. That sort of business support, business engagement, the Labour group keen to continue to see that happen moving forward?
Absolutely, and I think John's outlined our vision and ambition for Lancashire and saying that we want to transform LCDL into a business bank where we can, go the next level in terms of support to small and medium enterprises. But I think we need to go even further because, like you said, Transport for the North is not in favour with the government anymore, but neither are the LEPs. So there's a real opportunity for Lancashire County Council to drive business, to drive job growth, to drive investment in Lancashire by building that partnership, a public-private sector partnership, which creates the jobs, creates the training, and takes the next level. And we look at the Preston model, Frank, and what they've done in there, which is a very simple idea around community wealth building. If you can do it on a Preston level, there's no reason why we can't extend that across Lancashire and adopt the same model and take that forward, creating jobs, investing in local businesses and retail in our high street. And I think that's the way forward through LCDL, taking it to the next tier and turning it into a bank.
And again, I would say that, one of the criticisms that perhaps has been levelled over the past 8-10 years, perhaps, is that it's not really punched its weight. It perhaps hasn't been as united as it could have been. Not necessarily shouted about the great things that happen in the county. And the caveat to that, I think over the past couple of years, you can see that the county has got better. So, through the efforts of Marketing Lancashire, through things like the MIPIM delegation, and then, of course, the all-party parliamentary group that's recently been established, we're starting to at least see the county put what I would describe as parochial politics aside and start to really motor as a collective. Just talk me through a little bit more, John, about that structure that you have in mind to take that to the next step, to progress those early wins, if you like.
I think you're right. We have got a lot of good things going on, but they seem to be separate to each other. What we need is a Lancashire Assembly. In other words, where people can actually turn up and not as a talking shop, but as decision makers. And this is what we'll be saying to businesses, to trade unions, to other organisations. We want your input, but also we want your ability. And I think that's the important bit. We have a lot to offer in Lancashire, tons of it. What we need to do is make it work together. And we believe as a council, we have that opportunity to bring it together. It won't be perfect. None of these things ever are. But what it will do, as you've said, is have a common goal. and that's to make Lancashire a healthier place, a wealthier place, and for people to have pride in our industry and our enthusiasm for Lancashire. We seem to have, although, as you pointed out, a lot of good things going on, but quite often they're all working together. They're all fighting over the same money. They're all got their own little plans, and none of the plans actually join together. What we think in a Lancashire Assembly is a group that would actually make it work. I take you back to one of the things that we developed under Labour, which was the Lancashire Transport Master Plans, that every plan linked into each other. Every plan could demonstrate a way forward, whether it was train, buses or whatever, or new roads like the Heysham Link that we built, and many other projects that we actually brought forward, like the city deal around Preston. All that area was all because of the master plans linking together and making it happen. What we need now is a Lancashire Assembly that will put together that master plan for Lancashire and take it forward. And this is where we believe that businesses and trade unions and others should have a say in that, but also a vote in that. Because many of these organisations, you turn up, you talk, and at the end of the day, it's the decision makers who go away and decide. We believe that we're all decision makers. And like you've said, this is where we break down the political barriers. We break down this is council, this is business, this is trade unions, this is whatever. We're all decision makers there, and we should all have that opportunity to make those decisions.
And ultimately, as our listener, you and I have known each other a long time. We used to sit on something called the North West Regional Assembly many years ago.
Yeah.
You were leader of Pendle at that time. And when you think back to the sort of strategies, the politics that was developing at that time, very similar to what John's just outlined, actually, with, the trade unions, faith groups, community organisations, politicians, side by side. And although, we'd certainly welcome as an organisation combined authorities and elected mayors, I sense that there is less of an appetite amongst Boris Johnson and his colleagues for that sort of approach than we have under Osborne and Cameron. Is there a space here for Lancashire to look at something a little bit different, to actually say to the government, okay, one size doesn't fit all, and therefore it might not be a combined authority, it might not even be an elected mayor for Lancashire, it might be something else. Or do you think actually we should try and stick with the model that's there now and become a Liverpool City region, a Manchester City region, a West Yorkshire? What are your thoughts? What are you thinking at the moment?
I think you're right. I mean, I actually think the North West Regional Assembly, we're probably heading towards that in a few years' time, where we've got our city regions all coming together to fight for a stronger voice and a stronger share of resources for the North. And I think in Lancashire, I think we've got a blank page, and we can go in either direction, as you said. We can go towards something different, something new, or we can go for something which already exists. I think there's an opportunity in Lancashire to be actually different and to bring the trade unions, the voluntary sector, business and local government together. And, we're still two-tier in Lancashire, and large parts of Lancashire are still two-tier. There's a real passion for people to keep their locality and their neighbourhoods and their identity. And I think that could be kept together through some form, whether you want to call it an assembly, which brings business together, local government together to drive economic development forward, to be that sort of catalyst for regeneration in our high streets and in our deprived communities, and to boost tourism. And if you go back to what we were doing in the regional assembly, Frank, where you were playing a key role in driving that agenda forward, I could see that replicated on a Lancashire basis very easily, without the squabbles of who's going to be the mayor and who's going to be sitting in which chair, but brings all the political parties together. And I think that's one thing that in Lancashire, sadly, until now, Political parties have not worked together in a way that we did at the regional assembly, as you know, and we got the results from it. So I think one of the visions that John and I have is, yes, if we get control of the county council, great, but we will involve other political parties, will involve the district councils, and we already reached out to district councils leaders and said, look, tell us 3 things that you want or to happen over the next 4 years, and we're still waiting for some of them to come back to us. But it's a culture change that we need to instill. It's a new culture of working together, for the betterment of the people of Lancashire.
And again, one of the key areas that we've been talking about, seems to me, forever. And again, perhaps small improvements nowhere near enough, is education, skills and training. John, again, you briefly mentioned that, but if you look at the universities that we have in the county, Lancashire, Cllr, others as well, of course, and then you look at a strong college network as well, the county should be in a really good place to advance that particular agenda. And again, one of the frustrating things I know when you talk to principals of colleges, for example, is that Lancashire has missed out over the past 4 or 5 years because the big chunks of cash in that area have gone to places with combined authorities. So again, we do have to, I would suggest, come up with a vehicle that can start to attract that money and start to address those, as I say, real challenges around education, training and skills faced not just in Lancashire, across the country, of course, but acutely in some of our more deprived areas in the county.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. There has been discussions going on for, last 4+ years, all about local government reorganisation, as though that's the answer. And I think you're right, the answer isn't that. The answer is a combined authority of some form, working with those priorities in our area, like education. And it starts off as like nurseries and works its way all the way through to universities. And our universities, fantastic in leading the way across the world in many areas. Yet we constantly seem to fall backwards when it comes to attracting funding in. And I think it's because, and I think you've hit the nail on the head, we haven't got an organisation there fighting for Lancashire, saying, no, bring the money in. We only have to look at like another example, and going back to transport, HS2 is stopping at Wigan. That's it. And you're like, hang on, we've got a whole area here of Preston, Lancaster, all the way up to, no, we're stopping at Wigan and then we're going the other way. And like, that's because I believe we haven't had that voice. And what we've said, we will be loud and proud of Lancashire, and we need to get that confidence to do that. And through a combined authority of some form, that will happen. But as you said, the colleges, universities and schools will all be represented there. They'll be saying, this is the way forward for our pupils, our students, but also we'll have businesses saying to them, these are the skills we need. If we're going to like increase like Lancashire's industry, whether that is like an industry as we know it today or an industry of the future, but also there's the other side of it. There's like the waiters, the cooks, the cleaners. These are all vital people, and we've found out how vital they were during this pandemic. Now, everybody strives for universities, which is great. No, I've got no question about that. But what we have to do also is recognise how important all those key workers were that kept this country going, that kept Lancashire going. When other people had the opportunity to go on furlough and everything else, the people in the shops didn't. They kept working. The people on the buses kept working. The people cleaning the streets kept working. Everybody in what you would classify as not one of like the top range of jobs demonstrated how important their jobs were. And so, yeah, Everybody should have the opportunities to do the best they can, to be supported through whatever form of education they want to go to. But let's not forget, there are so many people out there who keep us going all the time, and they should be properly recognised by us and by the rest of the community.
Just turning to the final couple of questions, Azhar, and as I say, I think we're all conscious of the fact that this is going to be a challenging election for the Labour Party, not just in Lancashire, across the country, because of what's being described as the vaccine bounce. So, again, nobody would be churlish enough to suggest that we haven't had a hugely successful programme in terms of rolling out the vaccination. And maybe not to your advantage at the moment, but people seem to have short memories. And so what happened at the start of the pandemic isn't necessarily at the forefront of people's minds now. But the one thing I always say to people is, whatever your politics, please use your vote. And again, I think in terms of local government and its credibility and legitimacy, it really is important, because I think I'm right in saying this is the biggest election that there's been since, if you take all elections out, there's all sorts of elections going on a week on Thursday. So we do really need people, don't we, to get out, use the vote, and you see across the world where democracies don't operate, how important it is. When you're talking on Thursday, are you sensing an enthusiasm for people to get out and exercise that right to vote, or is there a little bit of lethargy after the past year and a feeling of, well, we've had a terrible year and actually things seem to be getting a bit better? What's just your general sense of that?
I think two things. Number one, I think because of the pandemic, a lot of people did sign up to all the political parties' campaigns for people to take on a postal vote. So I think there's been a significant increase in the number of people who are now registered for postal votes, Frank. So I think that will increase the percentage turnout as well. In terms of people going to vote, I mean, a lot of elderly people who've traditionally got up at 7 o'clock in the morning or 9 o'clock and they've taken their polling card, they're going down to polling station. I've not seen anything or heard anything which has told me that it's not going to happen. I think there is a small element of people who are still fairly ill, or those people who still feel very nervous, because I think this has really played on people's minds, and especially the elderly, and the ones who've had their 2 jabs feel a bit more confident now, and they've started going shopping. And I think the turnout will still be quite significant. I mean, this is the first election since the general election, which will test, all the political parties in terms of their messaging. But we've focused on local issues, whereas I know our opposition, the Conservatives, are trying to focus on how great the vaccination rollout has been, and it's been absolutely fantastic. But not enough credit is given to the nurses, the doctors, the volunteers, the marshals, the people who made sure that these vaccination rollouts have been successful. And I think we'll have to wait and see what the results are. But I do feel that people actually now, there's a bit more confidence growing. People feel that they might be able to go on holiday later on in the year, where even if it's in Britain somewhere. But the test will come in terms of, is there a vaccination bounce, and there's bound to be a vaccination bounce for the incumbent Tory government, because people feel a lot better. They feel that the NHS has done a good job. But on the other hand, potholes and roads is the number one thing on the doorstep. People are sick and tired of the state of public services, and that's down to years of cuts that we've had to face.
It is going to be an interesting election, I think, for all sorts of reasons. And Lancashire is going to be a key county. It's seen as a swing county, isn't it, both ways? So the nation's eyes are going to be on what happens in Lancashire. John, just final word for you. You've been involved in many campaigns over the years. You wouldn't think, looking at you, you're only 28. So again, just generally tell me what it's been like to campaign in what has got to have been a very strange and unusual environment. You know, it's not been the usual sort of election campaign, has it?
Well, it hasn't. And you talk about vaccination bounce. I know I've got a lot of credit from a lot of local community because I went back into nursing. Yeah. And, you know, I'm vaccinating people now and working at a centre. We're doing 2,000 people a day. So the people have picked up on that. They have seen a lot more of their councillors, not just Labour, but a lot more of other councillors who've been out there working and supporting their communities in voluntary, in nursing. Julie Gibson, who you know, has been working the post. She hasn't stopped work. So she's been carried on working. And people pick up on that. Azhar's been working out in the local community, dropping off food. So I think it's been a recognition for many councillors. There are those councillors who can't, and you've got to say, well, no, they couldn't go out. They had to isolate themselves because let's face it, a lot of them of a certain age, certain condition who can't. But for many of the councillors who have got directly engaged in supporting people, like I said, from all political persuasions, people have recognised that. And we're all getting a bit of a like, if we were out there, people recognise us, we're all getting a bit of thank you very much for what you did and what you're doing. So, yeah. And going back to Azhar's original point, and I always say to people, they always say, oh, how's it getting on? People stop shouting at me. So that's always a good thing when they stop giving you grief. Every session we had during 2019, we'd come back and at least 2 or 3 doors you'd knocked on and give you grief. This time, none. Like I said, a lot of people recognize me anyway now and say, oh, you're such and such and you're this, that and the other, which is great. But right across the board from people who are just starting it here, canvassing, never been canvassed before, who were frightened, thinking, oh God, what's people going to say in this? No, that's not happening. A lot of positivity, a lot of people saying, thank you for turning up, thank you for doing what you're doing. And I'm sure it's not just Labour. I'm sure the Conservatives, Liberals, Greens, whoever are getting that same thank you for turning up. Hopefully that'll be reflected in the votes, that the votes will actually go up from what was normal council voting. I think it might do. I think it's sad, though, that the government didn't offer everybody a postal vote.
Yeah, strange.
Well, when you think they can send out stuff to it, they're sending out all sorts of things to people. But when it comes to democracy, they're not so keen on democracy. They like to keep it tight and to actually make democracy get smaller rather than bigger, which has been a sign of the Conservatives. And I've got to say, for a number of years, how they've tried to cut down on people's ability to vote again and again and again. Now we're in this ridiculous situation of, turn up to vote, but bring your own pencil, which is, honestly, that's what they're saying to people. You can come and vote, but bring your own pencil, because otherwise it's a COVID risk. And this is nonsense, absolute nonsense. They should have said to people, here's a postal vote. If you want to use it, use it. If you want to turn up, turn up. But everybody's got a postal vote. What price democracy? Clearly, under the Conservatives, it doesn't stand very high.
John, you strayed into a very consensual last comment there, and then you've recovered at the end and got right back into election mode. So well done. It's been great talking to you two, and hopefully we can catch up face to face very soon. But I can't obviously offer any good wishes, because that would be showing what my political colours are, and I certainly wouldn't do that at this stage of election. But all the best, and see you very soon.
It'd be very good to speak to you afterwards as well. I think that would really go down well. Really appreciate it. Thanks very much. Cheers, Frank.
Cheers.
If you enjoyed that video, then please subscribe to our YouTube channel on the link below and be among the first to get to listen to all the latest interviews through the Downtown Den.